Alright guys, today we're going to take a look at Pokemon Deck Building 101. So an introduction to how to build a deck. If you're just getting started in the Pokemon TCG, I will give you a bit of tips and hints around how to do it, what it's all about, and what a typical deck should look like. So jumping right into it, a Pokemon deck is a 60 card deck of cards. Format legal, that means you need to have the right cards for the format, either standard or expanded, and that means that certain sets are in rotation and certain sets are out. The list of cards that are legal for play are available on the Pokemon website. It'll show you the sets, and each set has a symbol shown on the bottom of the card. Your card should be unmarked, preferably sleeved, and when you're building a deck, remember that you typically have a maximum of 4 of each card except for basic energy. Certain cards you may only have 1 of in the expanded format, so something like an Ace Trainer spec card, like a computer search. In terms of types of cards, you would typically have Pokemon between 10 and 20. They have different stages, from restored Pokemon, which are fossils, all the way through to Megas and now GXs, which aren't shown on the list. Each Pokemon has a type, or in the case of certain cards like Volcanion EX, a dual type of fire and water. Each Pokemon has an HP, which is its hit points or its health. They have weakness and resistance and a retreat cost. The retreat cost could be 0, or it could be massive. In a typical deck, you would play 8 to 12 energy cards, a combination of basic and special. And then roughly half of your deck would be trainer cards, a combination of items, tools, supporters and stadiums. Basic rules of the game: you start by drawing a card, play as many item cards as you can that you draw into one single supporter card, evolve your Pokemon as you need to if they came into play the last turn, attach an energy from your hand, announce your attack and resolve the effects of the attack. And that is pretty much how the game operates. Then we look at the card itself. Each Pokemon has a type, which in this case would be Dark, shown on the top right. Has a hit points, as I mentioned, in this case 130. A stage, this one is a basic Pokemon. Weakness and resistance, shown on the bottom, which in this case is weakness to electric and resistance to fighting, and it has a retreat cost. Before you begin to build a deck, you need to decide on a strategy, not a type. So you wouldn't say I want to play a water type, or I want to play a Pikachu deck. You need to decide on what kind of strategy you want to play. How are you going to meet one of your win conditions, which could be either taking all 6 prizes, knocking out all of your opponent's Pokemon, or decking them out. That means making them run out of cards in the deck. You also need to decide when you construct your deck how you will gain some level of setup speed, keep momentum during the game, be able to recover key resources, and disrupt your opponent as you go through the game. Common mistakes would be building for a favorite type of Pokemon only, not thinking about a strategy. Bundling in redundant Pokemon just because you've got space in the deck and you just throw them in there. Splitting strategies, that means having more than one strategy combined within one deck. Trying to cater for all possible matchups. You can't beat everything, certain matchups are just a loss. You need to be aware of the current metagame, and you don't want to design your deck to lose to everything that everyone's playing. The other thing to remember is that you don't want redundant resources, but you also want a way to recover your Pokemon, especially if you're playing evolution lines. If you go with a very thin pyramid scheme of lines like 3, 2, 1, the chances of hitting that one final evolution stage are very, very minimal. You don't want to have mixed energy requirements. Try to focus on a single type of energy or special energy to combine with it. And don't be concerned around discarding cards. Remember that late game, you want to have thinned out or gotten rid of all the cards out of your deck that you don't want to have clumped into your hand later on. So consistency, speed and momentum is important. You need to determine how you're best going to achieve that and have a stable, consistent turn 1 board state. That means setting up and ready to go from the first turn. How many of each card do you need to make that possible? How are you going to access them and search for them? How will you accelerate energy if you need to? What is your key method of drawing cards throughout the game? And how will you remove unwanted cards from your deck so that you don't clump your hand? I've given a couple of breakdowns and percentage likelihoods of hitting certain cards at certain counts, but it's quite important to remember that cards you want to hit early on in the game, you want to have higher counts of 4 of. Mid-game perhaps, or cards that aren't as important, you'd have 2 and 1 ofs, which would be either sort of searchable cards that you can search out as you need them, or they would be cards that you only need in the late game. In terms of selecting cards, aim to create a synergy, so you want to have an active Pokemon that's doing something and a benched Pokemon that's doing something else, whether it is helping you set up or draw more cards or add damage to your active, something of that nature. Consider how you're going to preserve your critical resources and get them back. Make sure that you have enough resources to meet your win condition. If you run out of Pokemon after only taking 4 prizes, you can never win the game. So ensure that you've got enough resources to win and you have enough resources not to lose. Have a mix of search, draw, recovery, disruption, switch and stadium cards, and every one of your 60 cards should be part of your strategy. If you reach the end of the game and you've almost finished your deck, you have built a good deck. Don't be afraid to run through it. Techs are one-off cards that are not part of your deck's primary strategy, but are there really to counter a specific weakness that your deck might have, or a common deck in the format. What's important is that these should really not be massive counts. There should be fairly low counts in your deck. You don't want them to clog your hand up, and they should be easily searched out. So don't sacrifice consistency to include tech cards into your deck. You need to be prepared to take a loss against certain decks in the format. So when you start out, a lot of players will start with a theme deck. There are some really good theme decks. It gives you access to a couple of Pokemon that might be good, some basic trainers, and you can supplement that with a tin that might contain, for example, a good staple EX or GX card. And then you would trade to get access to the rest of the cards that fit within your strategy by trading away cards that don't necessarily fit into your strategy. When you do a trade, check that you're trading for fair value. A rare does not equal a rare. Each card has a market value. You can find it on sites like Troll and Toad or CCG Castle. And then ePay is where you can go and buy your singles as and when you need them. Singles are cards that you would buy individually when you want to have higher counts of a specific card. So just finishing off looking at a couple of good resources. PokeBeach for news in terms of upcoming sets and cards. You have sites that talk through strategies and play styles like 60 cards, cut or tap, 6 prizes, someone's PC. And there are YouTube channels that will profile decks and concepts, show you how the deck runs and plays, and also maybe give coverage of specific events. And then as mentioned, there are sites where you can buy singles on the internet, which would be a way to get access to the exact cards you need without having to go with the luck of the draw from pulling them out of a booster pack. And that really is it. Just a quick rundown of how to play the game, how to build a deck, and hopefully this is useful for new players. Players that have been in the game for a long time will know all of this already. Thanks guys for watching. Let me know what you think, and like, comment and subscribe down below. Thanks everyone. Cheers.